Did the Greeks get their idea for a multi-headed monster from nature itself? Maybe they saw something that looked a lot like what you're about to see in this next video.
September 2020. Jeannie Wilson of Taylorsville, North Carolina is cleaning up after game night with family and friends. She heads into her sunroom where she comes across a modern-day monster. She records this video of a foot-long snake slithering around the bottom of a 5-gallon container with 2 heads. Based on the video, the snake's heads appear to be working independently of each other. Jeannie was nearly shocked out of her skin.
I spotted him in the corner of the sunroom. I thought somebody had stepped on his head and mashed it. And I looked really close and I said, "You've got 2 heads," and it's like, wow, for a 2-headed snake to make it that long out in the wild is amazing.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman believes that animals like this 2-headed serpent may have been the original inspiration for many of the world's most fearsome mythical monsters.
Probably the only thing scarier than a snake might be a 2-headed snake. If we look back into ancient times, you can find stories of multi-headed animals, like the multi-headed dog Carabas that guarded the gates of hell, or the Hydra, the many-headed snake monster. And I think that behind these sorts of stories is always a grain of truth.
Field researcher Ken Gerhard lays out a more sinister idea. Warning, these images could be disturbing.
I'm thinking of a Russian scientist who is able to successfully attach the head of a dog to another dog.
That would be Dr. Vladimir Demikhov, a pioneering Russian surgeon who transplanted one dog's head onto the neck of another dog back in 1968. The conjoined animals survived for 38 days.
So we can't rule out the possibility that this 2-headed snake could be the result of a similar type of experimentation.
Sadly, about 3/4 of all conjoined twins die before, during, or soon after birth.
So how did the snake get this way, and how did it survive?
Is this fantastic beast unnaturally lucky, or is it a bit too fantastic?
First, we brought the video to Roxy Furman to assess the authenticity.
I've seen conjoined twins before of various different other species, but my initial instinct was, is this head real or not? And up until kind of halfway through, this second head is not kind of using its tongue to smell the environment. But then there was a point where the second head, its tongue comes out, and at this point you can see it's kind of wanting to move in a different direction, which then made me think this is real.
Furman says these 2-headed creatures are examples of a natural but mysterious mutation called polycephaly.
There's a lot that we still don't understand about conjoined twins. If there are 2 heads, both which have their own consciousness, then who kind of overrides the control of the body, or whether they communicate with one another as 2 individuals would.
Furman refutes the idea that this multi-headed snake could be the product of human experimentation, similar to that of Soviet scientists in the 1950s.
There's no indication of recent surgery, there's no stitches or suture marks.
So it's a real, natural-born snake. But what explains its mutation and its survival?
It seems to be doing pretty well. This is unique because we don't often see animals with 2 heads that seem to be healthy, because they don't tend to survive in the wild.
And while Conger is positive the snake isn't some bizarre experiment, she says the genetic mutation we see here may still have been caused by humans, just not intentionally.
Amphibians and reptiles, like snakes, are actually just really prone to mutation. And a lot of this has to do with environmental pollution. It's been shown that there's a number of pollutants that can actually cause malformations in wildlife, and we're seeing this increasingly today.
So, our verdict. This snake was an example of polycephaly, quite possibly caused by pollution. What became of it is this story's happy ending. Jeannie gave the snake to a friend, and here's his update. He says he named the serpent Double Trouble and says he's alive and well.
Buenos Aires, Argentina, April 2020. Local media report strange sightings of bats that can swim and run on land. One provocative online headline reads, "Mysterious humanoid bats reported in Argentina and in China." And here is their proof. These humanoid-looking bat-like creatures appear to be swimming in a local lake. Take a closer look. What in the world can they be? 6,000 miles away, another freakish video of more mystery bats, this time from China. Watch as this one flops on the ground, making unsettling vocalizations.
It's flopping around, it's screeching, it's acting erratically. It's actually kind of disturbing. So it's fairly obvious why someone would immediately look at this and think this is some kind of really strange, weird-looking mutant bat.
Ambitious scientists have tried to create custom hybrid species before. Perhaps most famously, the Soviet zoologist Ilya Ivanov tried to cross an ape and a human back in the 1920s, without success. Are these swimming bats the result of some recent genetic project?
Even normal bats have a complex relationship with humans. Research suggests some viruses like measles and mumps originated in bats. But are the animals in these videos really some kind of mutant? We turn to our analysts.
I can see how this would look particularly mysterious.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says the theories about these creatures run the gamut.
There's some conjecture online that this animal might be the mix between a bat and something like a frog.
But she doesn't believe that kind of crossbreeding is possible.
To be able to mix two species that are so different would be highly unlikely and wouldn't result in something that would actually be alive.
So if this is not a mutant, what is it? Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley first focuses on the video out of China.
I don't think that this is even a bat. I think it's another type of mammal, something that's called a colugo. Colugos are a type of gliding mammal that are sometimes also called gliding lemurs. They can reach up to 200 feet using this amazing area that's called the patagium, that fold of skin that reaches from their forelimbs down to their hind limbs.
That might explain the Chinese video. But what about these strange things in the water in Buenos Aires?
I don't think that these are colugos. I think what we're actually seeing is a marine animal called a sea hare that we can see around the world and can grow up to 15 inches long. Both of these animals, I understand why people might think that these are mutant varieties of bats living underwater or looking like this strange animal screeching on the ground. But what I can tell by looking at their anatomy, that what we have is a colugo and sea hares.
Again, it's important to know that many species can share common characteristics and affinities. But people, frogs, and bats have different DNA and can't be crossbred, at least not yet. Our verdict? Colugos and sea hares.
It's a breezy February afternoon in Charleston, South Carolina. Erica Constantine is walking her dog River on a local beach when she sees something lying on the sand.
What the heck is this?
Take a good look. It appears to be the grisly remains of a strange creature. Mostly rotting bones, what could have been legs or flippers, razor-sharp teeth, and no eyes.
Beyond that, Erica can only wonder. I mean, what would you think?
I was like, holy I just found something weird.
A theory emerges that the creature had escaped from a facility on a nearby island. It's called Morgan Island, but it has a nickname, Monkey Island.
In the 1970s, the United States government imported thousands of rhesus monkeys from Puerto Rico and placed them onto the island.
The monkeys were released into the wild to breed and occasionally rounded up to be test subjects at a U.S. government lab. A lab that was trying to develop cures for various diseases, but nearby residents said there was more to it.
Locals in the town have this belief that the lab is the site of some pretty intense biological weapons testing, that the government might be engaging in genetic experiments to mutate these monkeys.
Decades later, there are 4,000 monkeys there. And reportedly, they display strange behavior like burial rituals for their dead, as if they've evolved. A few years back, one even turned up in someone's yard 7 miles away.
Of course, when anything does wash up on shore, you're going to have people automatically say it must be from this island that the government owns and it's a big secret no one's allowed to visit. It's kind of a mysterious place.
What the heck is this?
So what is going on in South Carolina? Our rule here is to keep an open mind while taking a hard, honest look at these videos. So we pulled in 2 top biologists to analyze the footage, and this is what they turned up.
Dr. Shay Conger is a marine biologist. The first thing she did was try to figure out if it really was a monkey.
This animal has the skeletal structure of a primate. There's a population of several thousand of these animals in a nearby location on Morgan Island. It's not totally implausible that one could wash up on a beach nearby.
Conger uses something called dentition analysis, the study of the teeth. Look closely at the premolars and molars in back.
You can see that there's a triangular shape to these. If this were a primate, we would expect that these would be more square-shaped. That's what leads me to deduce that this is maybe not a primate.
So even though the skeleton looks like a monkey, the teeth say it's something else. A seal or sea lion seems logical, but Conger says those bones mean only one thing: legs, not flippers. Conger has another theory.
This, as a whole, looks very much to me like a small carnivorous mammal.
That means it could be a raccoon or a coyote. But when our other expert, wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley, focuses on the skull, she suggests it could be something way more exotic.
So this could be something really interesting. It could be a big cat species, maybe something like a leopard.
That may sound like a stretch, but Eckersley says the cheekbone might be feline because of its flatness.
Looking at the teeth and the zygomatics, the cheekbones, that look like it could be mummified remains of a leopard that have been swept up in a weather event and moved somewhere else down the coast.
But what is a leopard, an animal native to Africa and Asia, doing on a beach in South Carolina? One theory, it fell off a boat. It's happened before. Decades ago, a giraffe reportedly drowned in the waters near Brooklyn, New York, while trying to escape from a ship heading to a zoo. Another possibility? Looking at the Atlantic currents, a dead leopard may have floated up from one of those wildlife ranches in Florida. But after further review, Eckersley agrees with Conger. Because of a pronounced snout, it's more likely to be something like a coyote. To know for sure, we'd need a DNA test. But Erica says the remains of the creature were destroyed by animal control.
That's only going to add to the conspiratorial fire, right? People are automatically going to go to, this must be a cover-up.
Okay, folks, so is it proof or not? Well, it's not a mutant monkey or a seal. That initial take on the cheekbone had us thinking leopard, but our verdict, coyote. As they say, you never know what the tide will bring in.
It's March 2020, a hot and humid day in the Brazilian Amazon. Local fishermen are crossing the Xingu River when they encounter an extraordinary sight. At first, it almost looks like waves or ripples, but let's have a closer look. It's some kind of gigantic snake. This thing is nightmarish, and by one estimate, it's 50 feet long. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt says it immediately reminds him of the legendary river serpent known as Boyuna, a gigantic mythical deity of South America.
It's described as being an enormous black snake or serpent, and it's considered to be a guardian of sorts, that it actually stands guard at certain sacred places.
But huge snakes aren't just part of folklore. They're actually part of the Amazonian fossil record. This is the prehistoric predator Titanoboa, which measured more than 40 feet long. Its midsection as wide as a man's waist. It weighed over a ton and could stay underwater for as long as 45 minutes.
This thing did in fact exist, and in this kind of habitat. Who's to say that they're all gone?
The fossil record shows that Titanoboa went extinct millions of years ago, but field researcher Cliff Barrickman notes that sometimes allegedly extinct species turn up alive and well. Example, the famous coelacanth fish.
The coelacanth fish was thought to be extinct for millions of years, like 20 million years, until it was discovered in the 1930s, swimming around in the oceans off of Indonesia. So we should expect to be discovering animals that were either thought to be extinct or are related to extinct animals.
Wow. Is the creature in the video some kind of relic species, some extremely large cousin of the Titanoboa that somehow survived? And when the Amazonian tribes people described Boyuna, the serpent river god, could they really have been talking about something real? We turn to our experts.
I mean, this is extraordinary.
Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley finds the video remarkable.
It could be that this snake is a living relic of Titanoboa, something that could trace its lineage back to that enormous animal.
But she thinks the serpent might be too big to be believed.
I think that this is an incredible sighting of an enormous snake. I think that this video has been stretched and manipulated to make it look even more enormous than it really was.
So we head back to forensic video analyst Michael Primo to authenticate the footage.
This video has left me baffled. We have a rippling effect that's consistent with the movements of the snake, which is a level of consistency that would be incredibly difficult to manufacture. If it has been changed, it's been changed to a minimal degree.
So, could it be a relative of Titanoboa? Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says that even if the video is totally legit, the creature's distended midsection is key evidence.
It appears to have consumed a very large prey, possibly a capybara or some type of ungulate. From what we know about the Titanoboa, they primarily consume fish.
Based on that dietary profile, Conger concludes this is a giant anaconda. But interestingly, she is not prepared to dismiss the notion that it could still be the god Boyuna.
The people that inhabit this area have spent centuries living around these animals. The division between the deity and the biological creature are not two different things. So to deny the fact that this animal may embody a regional deity or religious icon is outside the scope of what science should do.
So with that guidance in mind, our verdict, this is a giant anaconda. And whether you want to call it a predator, a deity, or some combination of both depends on how close you live to it.